The recent Dutch GP provided one of the most thrilling races yet, even though the familiar results saw Max Verstappen leading and winning the race. In contrast, Mercedes faced one of its toughest challenges. Hamilton started from the back of the grid but impressively climbed to 6th place. However, Russell, who began well, had his race cut short due to a collision with Lando Norris near the race's conclusion. For a while now, Mercedes has been attempting to catch up to Red Bull, but progress has been hard to discern. Despite their efforts since the previous season, the gap remains. Given these circumstances, a critical question arises. Can Mercedes find a way to overcome this situation? Keep watching until the end of this video to discover the answer. During the Dutch Grand Prix, Mercedes took some unusual strategy choices that Toto Wolff criticized as completely wrong. As rain began falling on the track during the opening lap at Zandvoort, several drivers immediately pitted to switch to intermediate tires. Many more drivers followed suit by the end of the second lap. However, Lewis Hamilton, who had started on medium tires, remained on the track until the end of lap 3, causing him to fall to a lower position in the race. George Russell was left out for another lap before Mercedes eventually called him in for a pit stop. Toto Wolff, the team principal of Mercedes, acknowledged that the team had made significant mistakes during the race at Zandvoort. They had tried to continue in dry races despite the rain, only to realize they were losing a lot of time. Wolff admitted that the decisions made by the team on the pit wall were completely wrong. Both Lewis Hamilton and George Russell ended up falling to the back of the pack due to these choices. From that point onward, they had to focus on making a comeback. Despite the challenges, both drivers displayed strong performances. George Russell's strategy to use hard tires worked well until he had contact late in the race, resulting in a puncture and retirement. Meanwhile, Hamilton managed to finish in 6th place and was closely pursuing Carlos Sainz's Ferrari. Wolff shared his perspective, stating, "We got it completely wrong. And that's annoying because the car had really pace, and then from there on was just recovering as good as we could. I'd rather have a good pace, a fast race car, and a mediocre result, even if it hurts." We saw at the end on the Inter, George had Max Verstappen's pace, and Lewis was very strong behind Sainz. He could have been much further ahead, but it's still bittersweet because the result is just really bad. It's what could have been, but that doesn't count in this sport. Toto Wolff, the head of Mercedes, has pledged to conduct a comprehensive review after the team's below-average performance. Embracing their culture of not blaming individuals, Wolff emphasized that the entire team, including himself, fell short of their anticipated standards. "We will review thoroughly, and the situation is never one person or one department," he said. "It is the communications between driver, pit wall, strategy, the weather frog, then all of us taking decisions, and that was absolutely subpar from all of us. That includes me, and it's good when it hurts. When it stings, it sticks. That's what you say, no?" Forced to return to the pits due to a puncture, George Russell managed to finish the race but struggled and ended up in 17th place. He expressed his disappointment, mentioning that the race felt over before it even properly began. Russell believed that their weather information was inaccurate and this affected their strategy. He believed that the team missed a chance for a podium finish due to this misjudgment. Russell called for Mercedes to hold discussions about what went wrong at Circuit Zandvoort. Despite Hamilton's recovery to 6th place, Russell emphasized that the problem wasn't related to racing or engineering. Instead, it was a matter of misinterpreting the weather information. He stressed the importance of investigating why other teams chose to pit and what information they had that Mercedes didn't. The aim is to prevent making the same mistake in the future. George Russell also expressed disappointment about the incident with Norris, but he refrained from blaming his fellow British driver. He labeled it as a racing incident. Russell acknowledged that the weekend had been a missed opportunity as the pace of the W14 cars had been notably impressive. The race was eventually won by Max Verstappen from Red Bull, who achieved an all-time record of 9 consecutive victories. This achievement extended his lead in the championship over his teammate Sergio Perez by a substantial 138 points. However, this race setback also affected Mercedes' pursuit of second place in the constructors' standings. Fernando Alonso's second place finish contributed to this challenge. Falling to third place in the Constructors' Championship could result in a significant financial impact amounting to millions. Mercedes experienced a reduction of 11 points in the gap separating them from Aston Martin in the Constructors' Championship. As they approach the upcoming Italian Grand Prix at Monza, they are facing a 40-point deficit in their quest for second place. Fans faced a significant disappointment after getting hopeful due to the extensive upgrades Jamie Allison had introduced since his return. However, for some, the outcome might not have been so unexpected. There's a perception that Mercedes tends to lag behind when it comes to strategy. This situation was quite evident during the race. Perez was on intermediates and he was considerably quicker by around 7 seconds in a specific sector. This was even before Hamilton had completed a lap past the pit lane. Despite this, Mercedes chose to leave their drivers out for another lap. The decision didn't make sense as the timing didn't favor them. By the time they switched to soft tires, others had already moved to intermediates, building a lead. They could then transition to dry tires and still maintain their lead. Historically, Mercedes has often struggled with making effective strategy decisions. This was largely because before 2021 their powerful engine could compensate for errors. However, the dynamics changed in 2021, requiring accurate decision-making, such as the infamous race where they neglected to pit. Notably, they also missed a possible victory last year in the Dutch GP due to not pitting during a safety car period. Does this sound familiar? There are numerous other instances as well. While Ferrari is criticized for their strategy choices, Mercedes doesn't appear to fare much better in this respect. Some feel that Toto is the weakest link at Mercedes, with his unconventional belief that no one is to blame. This perspective is disheartening as it's challenging to address problems without identifying them. Whether technical or personnel related, if human errors are the cause, someone should take responsibility. Lewis Hamilton has been compensating for the team's weaknesses through his exceptional performance. However, now that Mercedes has the second fastest car, they seem to struggle. Their strategy decisions have been subpar consistently. Their failure to improve is concerning, especially in areas like tire changes, which they should have mastered by now. The issue seems to rest with Toto. As the leader, his complacency is noticeable. Some believe it's time for him to step down from his role and allow someone else to lead as CEO and principal. Mercedes needs someone enthusiastic and eager to prove themselves in this position. Toto appears to lack the necessary drive and hasn't taken action even when his team faced unfair treatment. Some have observed Toto napping during FP on F1 TV. The feeling is that his success has made him somewhat complacent, and a break from Formula One might be beneficial before more harm is done to the drivers, engineers, and the brand as a whole. On the other hand, Lewis Hamilton believed that he had the speed to compete with Max Verstappen if Mercedes had made better strategy choices during the Dutch Grand Prix. Despite starting in 13th place, Hamilton was among the last drivers to switch to intermediate tires early in the race, causing him to drop to 18th. Nonetheless, he skillfully advanced through the field alongside Lando Norris and ultimately secured a 6th place finish amidst the chaotic rain conditions. Hamilton nearly achieved a top 5 outcome as he put pressure on Carlos Sainz towards the end of the race. Despite his efforts, he couldn't find a way to overtake. In reflecting on the race, Hamilton remarked, "Today, I had the pace. In those conditions, if we made the right calls, I could have challenged the top 2. We could have challenged Max, particularly when we got to the dry pace-wise, we weren't terribly far off. I'm not saying we would have beat them, but I think we would have been happy. It's still nice if you think that way." Although Mercedes' strategy initially put Hamilton at a disadvantage, the 7-time world champion showcased one of his finest performances this year as he recovered impressively. He acknowledged the team's mistaken decision, but expressed contentment with the way he managed to bounce back. Do you think Mercedes can bounce back? Let us know in the comments below.